Hey everybody, Jim Burns here. Welcome to HomeWord. Today's going to be one of those Just Jim podcasts. We do it about every few months, and people love these. And yet sometimes it's weird for me because I'm just talking to you, but I love doing the interviews. But we're going to talk today about a very important subject on my heart. It's been an important subject to me for a long, long time. It's called creating a media-safe home. Every time we have a podcast on this, and we've done some great podcasts on it, guess what happens? Our numbers go up because parents are trying to figure this out. So I want to give you some of my thoughts on it. And as I do, I want to remind you that you're not going to like some of this stuff that I'm going to say, okay? Because it's complicated, and I'm going to challenge you to probably you personally spend less time on social media. And I'm going to challenge you to not let your kids see as much social media as probably they do. And I get it. It's complicated. I know it works. We have the family dinners for birthday and we're at some restaurant and our grandkids are going crazy and, they put a phone in front and put Thomas the Train and guess what? That works. Okay. I was speaking not too long ago. As some of you may know, I used to be a youth speaker, so I would speak to about 250,000 kids a year, and I loved that part of my life. And then I, got old and decided that I would try to help parents help their kids. And I actually think what I do now is more effective, but I miss the kid thing sometimes. And so I happened to be speaking at a parent event. I was preaching at a church, and they said, "Hey, we've got 800 kids at an event on Friday. You want to speak at them?" And I said, "Sure." And then they said, "We want you to speak on social media and just how that affects kids and stuff." So I opened by saying, this was in Richmond, Virginia. I said, how many of you are addicted to social media? I said, better yet, how many of you think it's possible to be addicted to social media? And all 800 of the kids raised their hands. And I said, how many of you, I repeat again, how many of you are addicted? All but two. Two kids didn't put their hands up. All the rest, I think, put their hands up. So I had kids going crazy. Yeah, we're addicted. They even admitted it, see. Well, I want to help you understand, parents, especially if you have younger kids. This is key, but if you have older kids too, it's key. We call this digital candy, that actually the digital world is like candy. And they call it now, experts are calling online use digital candy. Not too long ago, I was speaking in Texas, and this character of a guy I'd already talked to him before I had started, and he had on this cool hat, kind of like a trucker hat. And so I pulled out some peanut M&Ms, and I said to him in front of everybody, I bet you just can't eat one. He said, I can. So I gave him one. I said, how'd you like it? He goes, oh, I love peanut M&Ms. And I said, do you want the bag? And he took the bag, and he just put it in his mouth. And he dumped it into his mouth. It was actually perfect, and everybody laughed and whatnot. But you know what? It's hard to eat one peanut M&M. So, myself, you, anybody will be saying, well, we'll only spend 5 minutes on social media, and all of a sudden we look up and we've just spent 2 hours, and mostly we can't do it in just a few minutes. So we go from reel to this or that, and the next thing you know, you're on a wild goose chase. Well, here's what's happening to you, but here's what's happening to your kids. They're actually getting what we call a dopamine drop. So dopamine is a pleasure hormone. It's in your brain, and actually it's the same pleasure hormone that happens when people have physical intimacy, and it drops. And it's too much of a good thing for many people. And so when you're going through social media, when you're looking at all these things, when you're online, well, the social media is causing your brain to just have a dopamine drop, right? Now, we haven't spent enough time ever talking about digital and the brain, not just, I'm saying on the podcast, but in the world. But today, we have some brain experts who are dealing with this. Nicholas Cardarius, he's an expert on brain chemistry. He said this, and I want you to listen to this quote. Digital drugs may be even more insidious and problematic than illicit drugs because we don't have our guard up against them, right? So we have our guard up against pot, we have our guard up against cocaine, we have our guard up against, all these other things. But when it comes to what we call digital drugs, we don't have our guard up against it. And so we're actually causing our kids to get addicted quite early. And, we got to consider what's going on here. So when thinking about your kids' brain development, you have to understand that kids need hands-on learning for social and emotional skills. Again, I'm not down on all online. I mean, you're probably listening to this online right now. But it can't be constant. And the other thing about social media is that, well, all media, it's addictive, okay? It's just addictive. I was in China and because it's also distractive. And I was in China, and on the road, I was in Beijing. I'd been speaking in Beijing, and there on the sidewalk they had people. Had cell phones, and then if you're on your cell phone, you walk one way or you walk the other way because people were running into each other in England. This is in London. I got my PhD in London. In London now they have texters, caution texters, because people were texting and walking out into the street and getting hit by some of those great beautiful black taxis. It's just crazy what is happening today. So media can be addictive and media can be distractive. Okay. So here's the question. This is worth you listening to this podcast today or watching it online. Is technology bringing your family closer together, or is it driving it farther apart? You've got to ask that question if your kids are 2. You've got to ask that question if your kids are 8. You've got to ask that question if your kids are 12. Is media bringing you closer, or is it bringing you apart? Well, I think there's a technology crisis today, and I know I sound like a big, terrible person here talking about something that is so near and dear to all of us. But what do we do? Well, here's 4 things I think we can do. Number 1 is we have to evaluate what we see and hear. Now, not just us evaluate what we see and hear, but we have to evaluate what our kids are seeing and hearing. Some of it is just simply not good, and if we don't evaluate, you wouldn't let your kids go to the mall when they're little, or you wouldn't let them go to a strip club when they're little, or you wouldn't let them do a lot of things. But sometimes we allow hours and hours of online. And so again, you evaluate. Secondly, is you examine your own behavior. Okay. Children see, children do. HomeWord, our office isn't there now, but our office for 11 years was by a private school. These moms would come in and they're beautiful, and it was an expensive one. And they'd come in their, Range Rovers and all these nice cars, and they would be on the phone talking to somebody else while their kids are in the car, and then they'd hold the phone to their chest and they'd say, "Okay, honey, love you, bye," and they'd go back to the conversation. I thought, wait, you're in a box, you're driving, you can communicate with your kids, but instead they were on the phone. So we have to be careful that we examine our own behavior if we want our kids to have good behavior. Now, the other thing is we have to enter into dialogue, not monologue. So our job is to teach our kids to learn to discern. You're not going to do that by just saying, don't watch this or don't look at this. But we have to help them understand why. And so it becomes a continual dialogue. One of the things I say about sex education, I say it often to parents, is I would rather have 100 one-minute conversations about sex education than 100-minute. Well, it's the same with media. So, and then at the same time, we've got to develop boundaries and expectations. So we like to use at HomeWord what we call the child and parent tech contract. And it's actually not HomeWord's. We have one. I like this one better. And it's at bark.us. And it's just a contract. And I think we develop these contracts. So as parents, if we're talking about social media, we're going to have to evaluate our approach to how we help our kids. I think there's 3 approaches. The last one is what I'm for. Number 1 is just uninvolved, head in the sand, let our kids do anything. They're young. They're going to learn how to self-soothe by looking at media, and that's where they're going to go. And that's one of the reasons why they're addicted. Every kid is not looking at horrible stuff, but if you're uninvolved in this is a major part of their life. This is a major part of their time. This is a major part of their learning, their experiencing. And today's young people, this is how they relate. This is where they go to work. This is so much of what they do. And if you're uninvolved with it, especially with the younger kids, then, that's not a good idea. But that's the head in the sand approach. Got to see if you're doing that. Secondly is overprotective, controlling, and absolute restrictive. Okay, I'm not for that one either. Okay. Now, there's some people who think that, people because maybe I'm a Christian and because, that I'll be overprotective, rigid, and restrictive. I don't think that. I think we have to do the third one, which is to help our kids learn to discern. So the truth is, as I even looked at my own kids, and I don't know that I did it all right, but I wanted them to become responsible users of media. And they have to learn to discern that. So raising our kids to become responsible adults is the goal of parenting, and raising our kids to be responsible with media is another part of that goal. See? So to do that, I'm going to walk through what I'm going to call media use guidelines for families. Now, again, I told you some of this that I was going to talk about today you're not going to like, and this is only my opinion, so I could be wrong. I'm actually more progressive on some of this, and for some I'm more conservative than others. But I think this is the statement. Less screen time means a healthier mind and body for your kids. Can I say that again? Less screen time means a healthier mind and body for your kids. So I'm not saying that we go back to the old style, okay? I mean, when I was growing up, I had a phone with a long extension line, and I would talk to my girlfriend when I was in high school, and then my mom would come in because I was asleep then, because I'd say, no, you hang up, no, you hang up, kind of play that game. And then, my mom would, pull the phone out. She was always frustrated with me. That's not what we're experiencing. And I'm not suggesting we do that. Okay, our television was on probably at the Burns household, my parents, 10 hours a day. I get that. I'm not suggesting that's a good thing. But today, there are much more, concerns. So I'm saying it's time for us to focus on helping your children regulate their digital use, okay? So when we come back, we're going to take a real quick break, but when we come back, that's what we're going to talk about. And I'm going to go through what you do when kids are younger than 2, what you do from 2 to 5, what you do from 6 to 10. And I think you're going to be surprised at what I'm going to tell you about screens. For one thing, I believe strongly that screens are not meant to be a babysitter. Anyway, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. By the way, if you have a teenager, I've got a book called Understanding Your Teen. I love that book. And I've also got a book called A Student's Guide to Sexual Integrity. Both deal with things like, creating a media-safe home, because that's such an intricate part of both of those topics. So anyway, we're going to hear more about that in a minute. We'll be right back. And when we come back, we're going to talk about media use guidelines, at least the ones we teach here at HomeWord. We'll be right back.
I'm Erin Mashaw, and I want to invite you into an honest conversation about one of life's most awkward yet important topics, sex.
Conversations about sex can bring up all kinds of weird emotions, not the least of which is awkward. But that's not a reason to avoid the topic altogether.
So, if everybody's doing it, then what's the big deal?
Where do you go with your questions? There are lots of voices telling you who you are, how to dress, what to think, how to feel. So how do we know what to listen to? Who can we trust to guide us?
When we treat others with radical respect, we honor God, we make our lives and relationships better, and we reflect God's love to the world all around us.
Now, I know you might be thinking, what? I don't need guardrails. I have good intentions, but what if intention isn't enough?
And as you think about the path from where you are now to where you want to be, who are the friends that can help you get there?
You'll hear personal stories, helpful advice, and truth from the Bible about how to make wise choices when it comes to love, sex, and dating.
Imagine being able to look back on this stage of your life without regrets about the way you handled relationships. You're not going to get there by accident. You're going to have to decide in advance what guardrails to put in place to get to where you want to be.
Join us for A Student's Guide to Sexual Integrity.
Welcome back. I'm Jim Burns. We're talking today about creating a media-safe home. And I'm so curious to know what you think about this. So let us know. I hope you subscribe to the podcast. Again, this is a unique one because it's just me. Usually I'm interviewing somebody else. And some of our best podcasts in this last year have been with people who are experts in this field. And so you're kind of getting my take on it this time. So we do these Just Jims every few months. And this is a Just Jim, just me talking to you. Well, let's go through this. Let's go through the ages. So younger than 2 years old. Here you go. This is what it is. What do you do with the screens? Very limited use. Let me just say it again. Your screens are not meant to be a babysitter. Children must learn to self-soothe. And if they self-soothe themselves with screens, then they don't know how to self-soothe. So you're going to have to teach your kids to learn to self-soothe without a screen. Research says that excessive screen time with the littlest of littles, 0 to 2, can cause language and social emotional delays, and you don't want that. So, and I know it works. We were in Greece, of all places, and my third grandson, his name is Huxley, he was having a fit, and we were in a car. A driver was taking us from one place to another, and we were with my daughter and her husband, and at the time Huxley. Now Huxley has a baby brother. And Kathy and I, and Huxley was just losing it. So the guy put up on a screen, Huxley was about 2, put up on a screen one of the shows, and it was the shows that he shows his kids. And guess what? For the next 2 hours, Huxley was mesmerized, and it worked, right? But you don't want to do that all the time. And yet, here's what's hard. It works even when they're little. So what do you do from 2 to 5? Because that is a different phase of development. Man, screen time, not more than 1 hour a day. Okay. And again, and I'm not being legalistic on this. If you go, okay, wait, they just saw an hour and 12 minutes. That's not the end of the world. But I don't even think you should probably do much of an hour a day. And when we grew up, we watched television, we watched cartoons, all that kind of stuff. You just don't want them to get into the habit of this being the same thing. And again, why? Because children have to learn to self-soothe. And they're not going to learn to soothe themselves without a screen if they're always watching that screen. So don't hand them the phone at the first sign of trouble, okay? I know it works, but 2 to 5, they're too young to be totally obsessed with screens. So what I'm saying is avoid using media as the only form and the only form of kind of calming your child down. Now, if you can, watch shows with your kids whenever you can. So good. Watch a show. Watch them with kids. I love that. In fact, with my kids, my grandkids at this age, because with my kids we didn't have this stuff, but with my grandkids, I'll watch shows. We watch Veggie Tales. We watch Mr. Phil TV. It's kind of a subscription with Phil Vischer, which is the same as Veggie Tales, similar type programming. There's a Bible app. I mean, I do that with them, but I do it with them, and we kind of learn. And my kids, these grandkids know Bible. They know all these things because we're looking at them together. They like it. It's fun. There's games. Love it. Just don't do it all the time. It's not the only way, okay? Now let's move to 6 to 10 years old. The best research says still limit it to 1 hour. Now, again, my guess is for you that most of your kids who are 6 to 10 watch more digital than 1 hour. And again, it doesn't include what they're getting at school, because by now they're getting this stuff at school. Our James, who's 9, comes home from school, gets on his little computer thing, and is actually doing his homework on it. So you got to have it. But the point that I'm saying is that you really want to limit just kind of recreational, digital use. It's just get them outside, okay? Play. Interact. It's much better for this age. Play and interaction with other kids. Being in sports, dance, schools, church, all these activities, that's so much better for them in their growth than watching, reels. Okay, so be careful on it. Now we're going to go to teens and tweens. Okay, that's the 10 to 14. This is a tougher one. Boy, if you're the parent of a 10 to 14-year-old, this is going to be really tough. Not just talking about digital, but just in life. But you know what we're saying here at HomeWord is you need to determine the amount of time, but that's up to you. You're the boss. But I strongly suggest you stay under 2 hours. And again, most kids this age are not spending only 2 hours. Monitor their viewing, because again, at that age, they don't have the ability to move and groove through things that are always good. So they're going to go down a rabbit trail. So you've got to monitor their viewing. And again, you're teaching them to learn to discern. We already talked about that. Don't allow social media before 13. That's my idea. By the way, it's the law. Do you know that a lady said to me not too long ago, HomeWord is the largest provider of parenting seminars in the U.S., and one of our big ones is one on this subject. And a woman came up to me at the break and she said, so my 9-year-old has a TikTok account and I don't know if I should be his friend or not. And so I said, well, you got 2 things. One is it's not TikTok, it's called TikTok, and it's actually one of the most used social media with teenagers. And I said, number 2 is it's actually kind of against the law for him to actually have a TikTok account until he's 13. Nobody really pays attention to that. But the reason they do that is because these kids don't know how to, consume digital, and too young, they have impulse response that's not good. So you can't do that. I mean, for example, Bill Gates, kind of a smart guy when it comes to media, he didn't give his kids cell phones until they were in high school. Steve Jobs says the same thing. A lot of these people now are saying, in fact, there's some people out there in the world of digital use and misuse who are now saying it probably isn't even smart to give it to your high schoolers. But again, I'm talking about teens and tweens. Be careful with this. One of the things about teens and tweens, you see a lot of sexting, you see a lot of these negative things, porn, and that's the first time they're going to see porn, probably between the ages of 10 and 15, earlier at 10 and 11 usually. But the reason is because they don't have the ability to make some of these kind of decisions yet. And so don't just give them a cell phone. In fact, a lot of people, I'm going to stop right here because I want to get to 15 to 18. But for a lot of people, they'll say, when is a good time to give my son or my daughter a cell phone? And I say, I don't think you give them their own personal cell phone at the beginning. I think you give them a family cell phone. I don't think it, at the very, very beginning, I don't even think it should be connected to the internet. I think they should be able to call and text. And so you're using it as a device to communicate, but not for them to, play around with. They don't have that ability yet. Then as they earn the right to be responsible, then you give them a cell phone when you think it's proper for them. But it's not just, well, all of my friends have a cell phone. No, all of their friends don't, but I get it. Most of their friends probably do. And, my kids used to say, you guys are the most conservative. Everybody has a cell phone. Well, then I found out everybody didn't, but we were slower at that, and I have no regrets on that. Okay, let's go to 15 to 18-year-old. What do you do with them? Well, again, they live in the home. So I think you have to determine a time and a place to monitor some of that viewing. And what I mean by that is you can go to the history on the computer or on the phone. You can kind of see where they're going. And I think you develop a viewing contract, and that includes time. So for me, and again, you may think I'm the, most conservative person in the world, but recreational screen time, because kids are using it for so many other things, less than 2 hours a day. Okay. And don't allow devices in the bedroom at night. What are we doing? There's this amazing thing called an alarm clock. And they go, well, it's my alarm clock. But they're then texting their friends at all hours of the night. If you get the HomeWord Culture Brief, which we send out free once a week, you should get it, sign up at homeword.com. But if you get it, you'll see that a lot of things with teens is that they are suffering, and I mean suffering, from lack of sleep. So part of that, the major reason they're suffering from lack of sleep is because of that one thing. It's called the digital device. Okay, turn off the devices at meals. There should be no tech zones in your home. Meals, driving in the car. I mean, what are your no tech zones? And again, the earlier you do it, the less pushback. If you have a 16-and-a-half-year-old or a 17-year-old, and you go, okay, we're going to start having digital, free zones, they're going to go, and who are you and what are you thinking? I get it. It's not going to be easy. They're going to push back. Blame me, okay? But I think we still do that. I think we do that as spouses. I mean, Kathy and I are empty nesters now, but I think it's important that we put our phone down at dinner, that we, aren't on the phone when we're driving with each other, and, and communicate, okay? So again, important stuff. Let me just give you some healthy digital media use tips for families. And this is kind of a review, but here we go. Do not feel pressured to introduce technology early. Okay, media devices are designed to be intuitive, and children learn quickly, so you don't have to worry about that. Have that family phone, but don't feel pressured by them, because they're going to come at you, to use too much digital use early. Okay, secondly, place consistent limits. Okay, as we've talked about, I gave you limits. You use your own limits. You're the parent, I'm not. But place consistent limits and hours of media use on them, and then follow through. And I know when we're tired and when we're frustrated and when we're stressed, then we give in too much. But, put those consistent limits down there and, hold by it. That's what we do. That's our job as a parent, to help them become responsible adults, help them become responsible with their digital use. Select and co-view media with your kids. That's good. We always had, back in the days of my kids being in the house, we would watch one television show a week. And it was like we brought out popcorn, we brought out licorice, we brought out, chocolate, whatever it was. And we would enjoy this kind of family time. So that's a good thing, but co-view media. I know, and I have no problem with parents, moms and dads. I know a single mom who plays games with their child, and they actually have good conversations, she says, while they're doing it. Fantastic. Do it. Just don't overdo that, okay? Check your child's media use for the health and safety of what they're doing, and try to stop using devices and screens for an hour before bedtime if that's possible at all. For one thing, it's hard for them to calm down with still looking at it. And I don't think you let them sleep with it. I've always said that, but this is kind of the review, right? And then plan media-free times on a daily basis, not a weekly basis. I know people who say Sunday they don't use media unless there's a media, especially the digital side, unless there's some kind of an emergency. And so, people do that. But also every day there should be at least the family dinner where you put the phones aside, okay? So what can we do? And I'm going to close with this. Let me give you some quick tips. Kind of goes along with what we've been saying. But here we go. No personal information without permission. Okay, kids want to give as much personal information. I'm not saying everybody's a stalker on their social media accounts or any of these things, but no personal permission. Okay, computer should be in a highly visible place. So what I'm saying is have places in your home, and again, it could be in the living room, it could be in their bedroom with their door open, but where the computer is highly visible, even if they're working on their schoolwork. Because if you have a 13-year-old son, 15-year-old daughter, and they're in their room, the door's closed, they're saying they're doing homework for the 4 hours, they're not doing homework for 4 hours. I just guarantee you. Maybe you have that kid. We didn't, but maybe you have that kid, but very few will. So again, it should be in a visible place where you can kind of just walk by, see what they're up to and whatnot. They're not babysitters. Computers and TVs and digital devices are not babysitters. The web is a resource. It's not just a toy. So yeah, can you do gaming? Of course you can. Some gaming is great. Some gaming stinks. But know what they're doing with gaming. But it's not just it's a resource. It's not just a toy. And make sure, as I kind of already alluded to, is have the parent-child privacy talk. And let me just say this, pornography rules the web. So it's so easy for kids to get hooked into pornography. Their top social media, the young people's top social media would be YouTube, Snapchat, TikTok, Instagram, and then number 5, interesting, is Facebook. That's the one demographic where they're going down. It goes up with others, but because you're on it, probably. But it's so easy to start with a YouTube video and move it toward pornography, okay? So I'm not saying YouTube is a porn site. I'm just simply saying it can move it that way, and the same with all of these, okay? And then consider a quality web filter. I hope that every family who is listening today has the wherewithal to do a quality web filter, especially at those younger ages, okay? And with that, you kind of can have some accountability. I like covenanteyes.com, XXXchurch.com. There's good web filters out there. It used to be that there were only good web filters for computers, but today there are good web filters, for so many other ways. I'm just going to say one other thing. Also use media in a positive way. For example, I use media when I speak. And why I do that is because what I know is the retention factor, if I'm just speaking to you, like what I'm doing right now, is like 5 to 10%. That's what your retention is. If I showed a video, it is 25%. So we used to have family nights, and we would do a inspirational YouTube video, and it would be memorable, or we would talk about something from a movie, or there's lots of inspiration out there. So use it, but use it in a positive manner, okay? And if that's the case, you're going to be better off. So I threw a lot at you. It was kind of the fire hose approach from Jim today on creating a media-safe home. Some of you may want to send this on to somebody else. You may want to talk about it with your spouse or with your kids even. Let me be the bad guy. Let them go, that guy's crazy. I'm going to be on media 7 hours a day, not less than 2. And then you have the conversation. Okay, so make me the bad guy if that's the case, but never too early to start this, never too late. In fact, next week I'm speaking at a Mothers of Preschoolers thing, and they wanted me to talk on creating a media-safe home, and I'm so thrilled they have me doing that. They usually don't ask me to talk on that, but I'm going to do it, and I'm not going to freak them out. I am going to say some of the stuff about self-soothing, and there's actually some great scriptural principles that you can talk about in terms of what you view with your eyes and your mind, and so many things like that. Even what we talk about with the integrity code, where you honor God with your body, you renew your mind for good. That's Romans 12:2. You turn your eyes from worthless things. That fits with what we've been talking about. And then also you guard your heart, because things come into your mind, they come in through your eyes, and then it's your heart that gets, kind of ripped apart if we're not careful. So anyway, some good thoughts. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for being a part of the HomeWord family. You are a part of the HomeWord family. You can always get more information about HomeWord at homeword.com. And it's just an honor to be with you. I'm so honored that people from all over the world are listening to this podcast. God bless.